Mic check, mic check. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out here tonight. My name is Bobby Whitson. I'm your County Commissioner Precinct 2 here. And I called Billy White, who I'll introduce here in a little bit, our tax appraiser for the county, to have a meeting with all of our neighbors to kind of explain what it is, the methodology of the tax appraiser's office and how they get these values, what those values mean, how to show you how to get the exemptions that you need to get if you don't already have them, answer any questions you may have here tonight. He was more than happy to do that. He's been here since January 1, December 1. So he's the new guy on the block. He lives right here with us. He's one of us here in Salado, been here for a long time now, and the kids grown up here. I've got Shay Ludicky over here to my right. He's our tax assessor collector, who actually has nothing at all to do with your tax appraisal values, but because of the title of his office in this county, a lot of the calls go to him. So he's here also to just verify what we're talking about and to ensure you that you can ask any of us any question here tonight that you want, and we want you to ask questions. But to get us started off tonight, I've asked Billy to kind of give us a synopsis of what it is that he does. He's got a little projection show here for you to kind of show you what it is that he does. And so, without wasting any more of your time, I'm just going to turn it over to him and get him started. Billy?
All right, thank you, sir. Hello? All right, well, thank you all for coming out tonight. And thank Commissioner Whitson and Dr. Novotny and Assessor Shay Ludicky for coming out and supporting us tonight. Just being part of this, I believe it's important for when we discuss the tax process for everybody to be involved and know all the different parts and pieces that there are that help determine what taxes you're going to pay. I do want to start out to tell you a little about me. I know Bobby already kind of explained it a little bit. But I know I've seen a lot of stuff on social media out there about what everybody's saying, all the good things, right? Good morning. There you go. Is that better? Sorry. Y'all just tell me if I'm talking too low. Just it's okay. Better now? All right, so I just want to tell you a little bit about me. So some of the stuff we see on social media say that I'm a Pflugerville City assessor. I used to be a Williamson County tax assessor. I saw one set up from California also. I'm not from California either, so. But I know you'll see the prices are going up. You may think that's where it's from, but we'll go over some of the slides here and I'll show you. All I'm trying to do is follow what's going on in the market and what I see that's out there. Go ahead. So I know you've all seen this one out there also, right? Maybe not be as funny right now, but here's how everybody sees it right now. I've seen this out there quite a bit on social media, talking about how this would be what Shay, the tax assessor, looks like, but he actually is not the one that appraised the house. So go ahead to the next slide, please. So just to give you all a little bit about what the appraisal district does, we are tasked with valuing over 169,000 parcels right now. And each year, we also collect taxes for it. The tax assessor, Shay, has contracted us along with all the other entities, which are the ISDs, the cities and such. They also are there to contract us to collect their taxes. We have 6 ISDs, 12 cities, and 10 other entities that we collect and value properties for at this time. And our main office is in Belton, satellite offices in Temple and Killeen. And currently we have 48 employees and we have 14 appraisers to value all 169,000 parcels each year. So after speaking with Commissioner Whitson last week, I know he said some of the things that we wanted to tell you about. We wanted to make sure we could educate you guys on the process, the public, about the tax process, about the parts that the appraisal district plays in it, what requirements and laws that we are bound by, maybe some of the items that caused the increase in the appraisals, and of course, what you can do if you disagree with value appraisal, how you can come see us, and we can possibly come to some resolutions on those values. So the appraisal district, what some confusions are, I think that we are part of the county. We are not part of the county. We are a separate political subdivision. Each year we are required to appraise properties at 100% of market value. The Texas tax code is pretty clear, as it says at the bottom. You can see all taxable property is supposed to be appraised at market value as of January 1st. Okay. So the way that this district is organized is we have the citizens of Bell County, you guys, you elect the school district board members, you elect the county commissioners, you elect the aldermen for the city council members and such. Each of these entities then elect a board of directors that governs the appraisal district. The board of directors, each, depending on how big each entity is within the county, they get a certain amount of votes and they determine who our board of directors are. The board of directors controls part of the appraisal district. The main thing that they do is obviously appoint and hire the chief appraiser. And some of my main task as the chief appraiser of the appraisal district is to be the primary administrator of the appraisal district. We are required to appraise all the value, all the property at the total taxable value, the market value on January 1st. We also determine all the eligibility for exemptions and for special valuations like agricultural. And then, of course, we certify the appraisal roll to be able to then turn it over to the tax units to determine what their tax rates are going to be. So to simplify some of the tax process, though, so to make it easier to understand, the appraisal districts, we determine the taxable value each year within each entity. And that's what the notices that we sent out. We sent these out based on the information that we have, and then the next little while time is for you to tell us if we're wrong or tell us if there's issues that you have with the properties. Once we get done going through all the protests and the appeals and talking to everybody, we turn that value over to the taxing entities. The taxing entities then determine their tax rates, which are based off of, they determine their budget, which they haven't even started setting yet. They divide that by the taxable value to determine the tax rate that they are going to set. The tax rate hearings, I think, typically take place in the fall, and that is actually your opportunity to go talk to them also. We sent you a personal invitation out to everybody to come out and talk to us. They don't necessarily send that invitation out, but at the tax rate hearings, it's your opportunity to come talk to them and tell them if you agree or don't agree with the tax rates, and have an opportunity to have a say in the other part of the decision as to the tax rates itself. And then, of course, on the other side of it, after they determine their tax rates and how much taxes each property is going to incur, then the appraisal district, since we contract for the assessor, we actually collect the taxes after that. So to show you our calendar that we use throughout the year. So typically our calendar, our year starts in the summer, right after we've done certified our roll and handing it over to the taxing entities. That is when our appraisers go out to the field. They have a few months from August till almost January to be able to get all of their field work done, which most of the time right now with the way the county's growing, they're spending most of their time measuring new houses and checking areas where they may have had issues the prior year. They come back in the field usually in January, and they have about a month, 2 months, because of the way the calendar works, to analyze all the sales that have happened in the county and determine valuations before we send out notices on April 1st. And of course, at that point in time is when we go through appeals and inquiries until we certify the roll in late July and turn it over to the entities. And then after that's when they set their tax rates, do the tax rate hearings in September, October timeframe. So I got a few questions here I know that I've seen on social media, and also some of the other questions I know that is just typical just because of some of the misunderstandings or some of the lingo that we use on our tax notices and also the tax lingo that we're required to use. So I want to get some of the general questions out of the way. And of course, when we're all done today, we'll have time for plenty of questions and answers, and even Shay can answer some of the questions too if he wants. So I've made no improvements to my property. Why does it say that my structure improvement value has changed? So on our notice, as you can see, this is a piece of where the notice that everybody just received. It says structure and improvement value. Go ahead, next slide. So improvement is a term, is an appraisal term, and it's not saying that you haven't improved your house. We're not saying that you changed it. More than likely, we haven't even been in your house. There's 169,000 properties. But improvement is the meaning an improvement to the land. It's basically the structure of the house and the property. Just because your value has changed and where it says improvement does not mean that we're saying that you've made an improvement to your property specifically. More than likely, most of that change is based off what we believe is what the market has changed that value. So what happens if the CAT doesn't appraise the properties at 100% of market value? So each year, or every other year, the Texas State Comptroller, they go in and do what they call a property value study on us. And they look at all the sales that we had. They also get other information that we didn't have, because Texas is a non-disclosure state. We don't receive all the sales. We receive quite a few of them, but not all of them. So they receive even more. They take all those sales and what we had and what they get, and then they determine if they think we did a good job on the appraisals. If they didn't, if they think we did not, and then the next year, they will study those specific school districts again to see if we passed it again. They require us to be within between 95 and 105% of what the property sold for each year of all the properties that they study. Okay, so if during that, after the second year, if they have it, so if we filled this year on one of the school districts, the next consecutive year we would test just that school district. If we filled it again, the next year again, they would actually possibly lose funding on the third year. So this year we will be doing all the county, all school districts, but can you go to the next slide? For the last 2 years, we've actually been below where we need to be in Salado. So as you can see, in 2017, we were at 92.65%, about 7 or 8% below where the state said we should be. And it's not me to say that I agree with exactly how the state does their evaluations, just as you probably don't agree with how I do all of our evaluations. But even so, it is showing us something that we were behind in the market in 2017. When they raised the values in 18 in Salado, we still were behind the values again, 93% in 2018. So when I was talking with Dr. Novotny, I believe it's at least a couple $100,000 is how much they could possibly lose in the budgets next year if they were to fail the Salado study again. On the third year is when this school actually loses some of the state funding that they receive if the appraisal district has not appraised their property at 100% of market value. So how do we determine the appraised value? So the first step in appraising a residential property is to value the land. And put it generally, we use vacant land sales when they're there. So if there's a lot next door to you that's sold, that'd be the perfect comparable sale. As y'all know, that doesn't happen in a perfect world or most worlds either, but that is what we use if we can. If not, we use allocations. Basically, look to see how much of a improved property sold for, and a certain percentage of it, we apply that to the land, and we look at all the other sales to determine where they are at as part of the allocations. Once we determine what we believe the land value is, at that point in time, we will value the improvement. To value the improvement, we review all the sales within that neighborhood, that group of properties, and we're looking at all what we think are similar properties. And we will take each one of those and see how far above or below are we at currently compared to what they sold for. So once we do that, we determine what kind of modifier or multiplier, as you could call it, do we have to apply to all those accounts to move them up or down to get them all to get to almost 100% of what they sold for. So in a similar type of neighborhoods, we'll move that up and down until we get 100% of what they sold for, looking at all the different ratios, and go to 100% median of what they sold for. And that's basically how we get to the improvement part. The sales prices that happen and the appraised values that we're putting out there, they're for total market value. When you buy property, a house, you have to buy the land underneath it. You can't buy just one or the other. So even though we did raise values in quite a bit of land values in Salado, the total value is what's important, because we're looking at total value. If we were to put $1 on the land or $200,000 on the land, your total value is still going to be the same. It's based off what we believe the total value of the actual house and land all is together. So why did my land increase so much? So when my appraisers brought to me this year, in the short time I had before we sent out notices, we did realize that we were behind quite a bit on land values, on market values that we had seen, some sales that we'd seen. And the reason we get that way sometimes is partly because we could have sales that weren't present and we actually value. Like I said before, Texas is a non-disclosure state, so we may not receive all the sales. This year we received some of those sales and we saw what was happening. It was hard to ignore once you find out what the sales are and you see what their land values are. So for land values, there was quite a bit acreage, some of the lot values in Mill Creek, Hidden Springs, quite a few of them did go up. And if any of you were to look at what some of those empty lots were selling for, to people buying and building on it, you'd see that most of that is founded. And we do have sales to support most of the actual lot values that are happening out there. So my appraisal increased over last year. Why would that be? So market activity, that is the main reason that the appraisals are going to increase, right? So we are there, the appraisal district, all we are trying to do, we're not trying to determine what the market is. We're there merely as a reflection of the market, trying to determine what it's doing. We're trying to mirror it over on our values to try to make it look exactly like what the market is doing. We want to mirror it on our values also. So market activity is the main indicator for why most of the values increased this year. And it may have been that some of them were behind the years before that may not have been at market value, causing a larger increase this year. But once we see what the market values are, it's hard to ignore where we should be putting the values. Go ahead. So a great site that y'all can look at if you're ever just curious about real estate and values and what's going on, and some of you realtors out there may know plenty about. The Texas A&M Real Estate Center does a lot of research on the real estate in Texas. They look at every different, what they call service areas, which ours is the Killeen Temple area, and it covers the whole MSA of Killeen, which is basically Bill County. And as you can see here, from 1990, since when they've been studying it, the sales prices, the average sales prices have increased steadily, and so have the number of sales. And you can see even in 2016 or so, it looks like we certainly took off in Bell County based on sales prices as what it was selling. And even though you may not have seen as big of an increase the last 2 years, that may be partly where we're at now, based on catching up for those couple of years where we may not be able to mirror the market because of the information that we had or didn't have at that time. So you can see quite a few sales have happened, or sales prices also have gone up to, I believe it's about 169,000, I think is what the average sales price was this last year, according to the Texas A&M Real Estate Center. So also one thing that they look at is the months of inventory. And those real estate agents out there, again, are probably familiar with this, but basically a way to explain months of inventory, if you were to have a run-in faucet and you turned it off, this is how much longer that faucet's going to run until it runs dry. So this is how many months of available houses will be out there if you were to stop selling houses and had any available on the market. Typically, this is basically a way of showing what kind of demand is out there in the market. So as you can see, 2018, we're the lowest it's ever been in Bell County. And what that shows is there's not much out there for sale. And as long as the inventory keeps going down, obviously what happens is supply goes down, the demand goes up, and therefore the prices are going to increase. So until we start building more houses in Salado, or people quit moving here, this is probably going to be a factor for the future to come, unless something changes with, like I said, unless the market takes a downturn and people quit moving here. But as you can see, Bell County and Salado alone, there's very little inventory that's out there right now. And again, like I said, what we're doing, we're just reporting what the market's doing. All we're trying to do is mirror and follow the market. We're not trying to set any rates or any values based off of getting taxes or any of that effect. Honestly, my first year here, if I could have made this easy and left all the values flat and had nobody come and complain to me, that would have been a perfect first year, my first 4 months. But you know, it's hard to ignore it. And the law of the code requires me to go what I believe market value is based off the sales and what the information my appraisers bring to me. As you can see here, this shows us a little bit of what the activity has been going on this last year. We have 107,000 approved residential properties in Bell County. 3,700 of those had a deed or transaction on them. Or actually, I'm sorry, 11,500 did. In Salado, I see we have 3,700 properties, and 400, that's just over 11% of the properties changed hands this last year. So that's a lot of properties moving out there in Salado and Bell County. So one thing I did when I've been seeing a lot of people out there saying I can never sell my house for that, and some of you may be right. Those are the people you need to come talk to us afterwards and in protest. But for some of you, you need to look at what's going on in the market and see what people are out there listening for. And sometimes if you haven't looked at it while you're not planning on selling, sometimes you don't go out there and see what's going on in the market. I pulled this yesterday just to see what out there is listings in the market and to see where we were at and how our appraisals that we just noticed, this wasn't last year's appraisals, these are the notice values that we just sent out. And as you can see in Bell County, on all the 1,044 properties that were listed yesterday, our values are only 75% of them on average. There were some over and some lower, but 75% is where we're at on average of what the listings are at. And Salado was at 84% as to what they're listing the property compared to what what we have it valued at. So we're still behind based off the listings that are out there. Maybe those are just the high dollar ones that are out there. Maybe they're asking too much. Maybe they won't get what they're getting for. But just to show where we're at compared to the market. Actually, I expect this number to be closer. I was hoping it would be, but it was quite a bit difference when I pulled it. So what does a homestead exemption do? I heard a lot of y'all say, I thought that meant my value would not go more than 10%. So what the homestead cap does, one of the main things that the homestead does, it's a homestead cap, and it limits what you're going to be assessed on, what you're going to pay taxes on. It's not going to change what your total market value is going to be on the property. Your total market value is still going to be what the market value we believe it should be, or what you and the appraisers agree to if you protest at that point. But the homestead, the cap, what you pay taxes on, is going to be 10% more than last year. So when you look at your notice, it says the total market value of homestead portion increases more than 10% from prior year. than appraised, then you're only gonna pay 10%. The only difference would that be sometimes if you add a new improvement, add a workshop, a building, a pool, it's gonna be 10% plus the value of what you actually, what the value of what you added to the property was. But it will be present each year. So if, for instance, you have a $100,000 house, we appraised it at $150,000 this year, you have a homestead on it, you're only gonna pay taxes on 110% this year. If next year it goes up again, you're only going to pay on 10% more, which is what, $12,000. So $122,000 is what you're going to pay taxes on. It will just keep going up until it hits that, but there's always a possibility that the market comes down again too. So if the market comes down less than 10%, obviously we're not going to go up to the 10%. And also, so the requirements are, for those of you who may or may not have homesteads, you have to reside in the property. It has to be your primary residence as of January 1st. And that is the year you're applying for. The deadline to apply typically is April 30th. But if you do apply late, the law does allow us to go up to 2 years back if you apply later and be able to get refunds. But preferably, as soon as you move in, that first January 1st, you need to get your applications in. Even before you hit that January 1st, you can apply for the future year. And I don't know if y'all noticed the signs, kind of makeshift signs we made, but we do actually have a couple of my staff that were graciously agreed to come out here today to talk to anybody about exemptions specifically, or to take any exemptions. If you haven't filed it or don't know if you have, stop by and see them on the way out. They're prepared to take all exemptions that anybody has or questions about them also. So, and also the other thing that the homestead exemption does is it gives you, for the ISD, it gives you a $25,000 exemption. So again, on that $110,000 worth of taxes you're going to pay on, you actually subtract $25,000 off that value, and that's what you'll actually pay taxes on for the school district. It gives a $25,000 exemption. For the village of Salado homestead, it's $5,000 or 20%, whichever is greater. So whenever you figure out what that 10% cap value was, you take that amount off for that specific entity that gives that homestead exemption also. So if I think my property is overvalued, what recourse do I have? So we have quite a few different ways for you guys to come in and talk to us and discuss with the appraiser, even if you just wanted to see how we got your value. It doesn't necessarily mean you want to protest it, but you just want to see how we got there or see the sales that are happening. Unfortunately, because of the Texas laws, I can't just give you all the sales and information that's out there because it's a non-disclosure state and there are things that don't allow us to give out the sales. We can't do that. But if you come and talk to us or protest your property, we can give you the sales information. That's what basically what triggers it to allow us to give you that information. Preferably, as many as possible, we would like to come in on our walk-in period. We have what we call a walk-in or an inquiry, where all of our appraisers are set up in a room, be able to talk to people every day. We started this last week, and they'll be there till May 15th, which is the protest deadline, to discuss with property owners any of your issues, to go over the comparables and show you the sales and make any adjustments that are warranted. They are, every day we've been seeing about 80, 90 people each day. They come in, we get them in 20 to 25 minutes, show you where you're at, and plenty of people walk away with agreements of changes and adjustments to values, or at least satisfied us to show them how we got to those values. Of course, if you don't come in during a walk-in period, there are other ways that you can resolve your property. You can protest online. Once you do that, you can tell us what is wrong with your property. We, on most residential properties, within a few days, we're going to send you a comparison grid, show you the properties that we actually use to value your property. And if there's a offer made off those comparables, then you will get that offer made, and you can actually accept an offer online at that point. Of course, if you don't want to file a line or come into the walk-in period, or if you can't resolve it during any of those times, you can protest by mail, fax, or email, and go before the appraisal review board at that point. And we'll go over that in a moment also. So the walk-in, I think I talked about most of that, but basically they are available every day. And this is only at the development office. We want to keep all of our appraisers together so we can actually manage it. So the development office is the only place we are offering this until April 15th from 8 to 4:30. And they're on a first-come, first-served basis. It gets a little busy at lunch. The first thing in the morning, we usually have our morning rush, but feel free to come by if you have some time and see how we got to your value. So when you're sitting with an appraiser, one of the things they will show you is a comp grid. Earlier I told you how we rate all the properties and move them up or down with a multiplier. That's how we do basically our mass appraisal, how we do our initial appraisal. When you come to talk to us, we're going to look at and show you, see how your property sits within specific comparables. We're going to do almost like a fee appraisal, very similar to that, just not as detailed. And we're going to see how you feel within that. Quite often when you come in, we're going to pull 4 or 5 sales that may be more comparable than the 20 sales of your neighbor that you used to value it. And quite often it may actually show that there's an adjustment needed to your property based off those specific sales. We'll pull those forward to 3 to 5 sales that are there. We'll put up all the characteristics for each of those properties. And then what we do, just like any fee appraisal will do, we'll make adjustments for differences. If they have a pool, we're going to adjust off the pool, and vice versa, garage, more square footage, higher quality, different size land. We'll make those adjustments, and then down at the bottom, it'll have a value, a median value of those comparisons, and that's what the appraiser is going to offer you at that point. Or you can discuss with the appraisers different comparables that are there and such. But this is what's similar to Concrete that you would receive talking to an appraiser, and also during our online protests, this is what you would also receive by mail or email. So if you come to the walk-in inquiry or during the protest, what should you bring with you? So items that are helpful, settlement statements. If you just bought your house in the last year, since January 2018, bring in your settlement statements. And that's the contract price that you got when you close on your house. Just bring all your closing paperwork if you don't know which one it is. And it tells us how much you paid for the house. Obviously, if you paid more than the house than we have on it, you probably want to stay home. But if you paid less than that, bring in your settlement statement. Other things you can bring that can help us is your fee appraisals. If you got a fee appraisal recently for a refinance, or because you think our value is too high and you want to go talk to the fee appraiser and see what they got, or if it's because you closed on a new house and you got a fee appraisal, it helps us determine, especially if you paid much lower than we have on it, it helps gives us another source to say how or why you paid less. It's another indicator to show us that. Also, when it comes to the fee appraisals, it can help us if we think there's any kind of square footage issues. Fee appraisal will go and measure your house, so he may have different measurements than we do. We can compare to see what our differences are and if there's any issues we need to correct when it comes to square footages. Other information you can bring is sales data. Once again, I said Texas is a non-disclosure state, so we don't receive all the sales. So if you think your couple neighbors down the road, they all sold for a lot less than what you have on yours, and you think they should be using comparables, then go to a realtor, get that information, and bring it into us, or talk to the people that did, and bring that information to us. The more information we have, the more we can help you. Other things you can bring, if you have any damage or condition issues, problems with your houses, you want to bring current photos and of course estimates if possible. You want to bring any estimates to repair the slab, repair a roof, shows how much it's going to cost to get it back to a regular lived-in value. So if you protest online, you can, on your actual notice, there's an owner ID and an e-file pin. Once you go there, like I said, you're going to receive your comparable grid, and you can actually sell online through email, back and forth through email within a few days. We've sold quite a few already online. So, and of course, if you don't sell online, you can always, then at that point, we'll schedule you for a hearing. You'll come in for an actual hearing. Oh, one other thing that we did offer new on the online also this year is actually you can schedule your hearing too. We do actually have scheduling available. So the only bad thing is that we have a very limited time of windows where we have the appraisal review board available to have hearings. So they start May 21st. Right now we currently are the first week open for hearings, and it's only going to be probably a few weeks. So it is a very limited time, and it's only when they're able to meet and when our budget is able to pay for them to be there at that point in time. So, but you can go online and schedule your time of hearing. And as far as my deputy told me last time, we still have quite a few openings on those hearings, but the sooner you get into the better if you want to schedule online. I'd encourage you to come and talk to us first to see if we can resolve the property without even having to do the formal protest. So if you protest by mail or fax or email, your protests are going to be scheduled during that time. We're going to send you a letter. We have to send it at least 14 days before your hearing. And we're going to send it out to you, tell you the time and date you are to show up for that hearing. Once you show up, we're going to sit down with you with an appraiser and see if we can resolve the matter beforehand. Even if you already talked to an appraiser, we're probably going to go review the case again and go through it again and see if we can resolve it. If we still can't resolve it, then we'll go before the appraisal review board. And they will, at that point, be able to make a decision on the property. So the appraisal review board I keep talking about, they are a separate set of citizens that are there to hear disputes, mostly between the property owners and the tax appraisal district, or to when we can't come to agreements, or if you have a property with a lot of issues that have no estimates, so we can't put a number value on it, the appraisal review board is there to be able to make those decisions. What would happen after you get done with your hearing, you would sit down with in front of the appraisal review board. You'll tell your side of what you think the value should be. Our representative will say, here's what we believe the value is, show our comparisons. The appraisal review board, right before the hearing is over, they will make a decision on value at that point in time. And of course, they'll be mailed to you and certified later. Of course, if you still don't agree with the appraisal review board's decision, the next options, of course, there's binding arbitration, lawsuits, and some to that effect. But the appraisal review board is there to hear the property owner protest is one of their main tasks that they do. They also approve our records once we're done certifying the rolls. So if I protest and the total market value doesn't go below the homestead cap value, will this change my taxes? So we get this question a lot, and I don't want to discourage anybody from coming to talk to us. But the taxes are based off the homestead assessed value, or the homestead cap value if you've capped out, which I know a lot of you have at this point. So if you say that $150,000 house again, if you're going to be paying taxes on $110,000 and you think it's still worth $130,000, we're just way too high at $150,000. If you come in and you're successful at getting us to lower to $130,000, it's still not going to change your taxes. Your taxes will still be based on $110,000. Like I said, I'm not trying to discourage anybody from coming in, but you have to realize that even if you get a change to that amount, it's still not going to change your taxes till you go below that homestead cap value. Only at that point in time will it actually change the amount of taxes that you can possibly pay on that property. All right, so I guess this is for questions. Bobby, do you have anything on answers?
Yeah, I've got a microphone out here. Shay's got one, and we'll probably, I'll let Billy keep his. But I want to say a couple words right quick before I get out in front of the speaker. First, I'd like to just say thank you for all of you being here. You're part of the community, and I've got a lot of phone calls, a lot of things I couldn't answer, and that's why I approached Billy and asked him to come. He was very willing to have this. He's putting himself up here in front of everybody, and honestly, in a spot where he can have things thrown at him and everything else. And this is a very touchy issue, and we understand that. I don't like taxes any more than anybody else does, but the fact of the matter is we pay taxes based on fair market value. His job is just to determine that fair market value. He and his staff admit that sometimes they make mistakes, and they want those mistakes corrected if they are mistakes, and that's why they're here tonight, to do just that. He wants to be precise on that value so that you're not paying any more taxes than you have to. I think everybody here tonight wants to make sure you don't pay any more taxes than you have to as well, and so that's why I thank you for being here. Having said that, the fact that he's willing to do this is a blessing to our county, that he's even willing to have this discussion here, or I didn't expect him to bring the staff tonight. So he's even brought staff tonight. Thank y'all for coming too. I didn't realize that's what y'all were here for. But he's even trying to take the time out of their personal time out of their schedule to make sure that your property values are right, that you have the right exemptions on your property, so that everybody here is treated as fairly as possible. And in that spirit, when we go, we're going to ask everybody to have an opportunity here to ask questions. I just ask that you give him the same courtesy that he's given you and be polite. I know this is a touchy issue. I've had phone calls of which I can do nothing about. I really have nothing to do with, but I've been getting an earful for the last couple of weeks. And so I understand it's an emotional issue. I understand it's a very serious issue for some of you who are on fixed incomes, and regardless if it's fair market value or not, it may be difficult for you to pay those taxes at that fair market value, and you're just looking for some relief, and that's what we're here for. So ask any question that you may have. I'm going to ask that you raise your hand, do it orderly. We're going to bring you a microphone so everybody else can hear that same question, and you'll also hear the answer out of Billy's mouth here on a microphone as well, so that we make sure everybody can get all the questions answered that they have. So at that, I'll entertain some questions and have Shay bring you. Shay, start to your right over here first. He got his hand up there first.
Test.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Your staff is here. Could you have them stand up so we'll know where to go if we want to talk to them? Right over there? Okay, that's all I needed. Thank you very much.
Back here, and then we'll get you down here.
All right, got that 2 mics.
You'll get him in front of you.
Quick question. Actually, it's 2 parts. Because I've been through the protest. What's the percentage of success in the various stages that you've got for the protest procedures?
So he asked, what is the percentage of success when people come in and protest and go through the process?
In terms of reductions?
In terms of reduction, I don't have the exact numbers of dollar amount of reductions, but it's pretty early on in my career here at Bell, looking at what the statistics are. But in the past week or so, as people were coming in, from what my staff has told me, I think we're about 50% of the people that come in, we make reductions. Now, whether those are big or large reductions, about 50% of them come in and we have made changes to the property and they have signed off and agreed to the values. Out of the probably, I think we've seen about 500 so far.
But you don't have a percentage of reduction of appraised values,
No, sir, I haven't had a chance to get to those numbers yet, no, sir.
even from past years.
From past years, no, sir, I don't have those statistics from last year's.
Can I make one final comment?
Yes, sir.
You look around this room, as you've indicated earlier, most of the people probably like the are on fixed incomes. When we read articles as appeared in the Clean Daily Herald yesterday, with the rate people pointing fingers at the appraisal people, and the appraisal people pointing at the rate people, and then you throw in the state that says they've already built these increases into their budget. A lot of us have lost faith and confidence in the system. You yourself indicated that the definition, the taxable basis, it hasn't changed. It remains the same. The responsibility of taxing at 100% has remained consistent for years. So obviously somebody, and I'm not pointing fingers, but somebody in that three-legged stool hasn't been doing their job. Anytime someone sees something go up about 100%, you have to sit up and ask why. And a slideshow just doesn't answer the questions that I think most people come to. These tax increases have impacted adversely possible house sales. I found myself trying to unload property because I know 50% of a really good retirement pay goes to property taxes. And I'm sorry, sir, but going through the basics that you're showing here, it's nice. It's a dog and pony show. But it doesn't answer the real question. I'm kind of glad that I didn't bring my mic.
Well, I wasn't here before, so I can't answer what happened before. I can tell you right now, we're trying to get to 100% of market value this year. I can't answer what happened before I was here or how it came. All I can tell you is what we're looking at, where value's at now, and we're pushing it to what I believe was right, what the code requires me to do.
You're trying to get to 100%.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to explain.
I understand.
why 100% increase. Thank you.
Yes, sir. In one of the documents you talked about, in here, we'll repeat it. Yeah, one of the documents you talked about, appraisal, is that like an appraisal we got when we bought our home less than a year ago?
He's asking about, when I talked about a fee appraisal, he's asking what that is. The fee appraisal is when you buy a home, yes, if you got a finance, you need to get a fee appraisal. It's probably one of the many things, that big stack of paper you got. The actual, before the mortgage company gave you a loan on that property, you had to have a fee appraisal that at least came up to the value that you were actually paying for that price. So yes, it's within that stuff you got for your house when you purchased it.
Does that carry a great deal of weight? Because that's what we paid for the house. We got the appraisal that our contract is based on. Our appraisal here is almost twice what we just got the house appraised for less than 6 months ago.
He's asking if it carries a lot of weight. Yes, it does actually. And we actually are required with fee appraisals with homestead property for us to look at it and to apply more weight to it. Even more weight than anything when it comes down to if you just purchase your house, though, it's going to be your settlement statement and your purchase price. The fee appraisal will help back it up, though, if it's well below what we're at, because if you bought it for much less than we thought other sales were happening in the area, definitely bring your fee appraisal too, because that'll help explain your price. And we'll be able to see that maybe the fee appraiser, he had different comparisons that we didn't have, or he did different adjustments, or he knew more specifics about your house. I didn't go inside your house and look at it, but he did. So yes, bring both of those and we can look at them.
Thank you.
Do we have a microphone? Is it working?
We can't understand. We haven't heard a word you said.
He's working on it. Go ahead.
In our a water issue, when the water flows toward the creek, and a lot of these houses are on hills, or the water floods when it rains, and yet all these houses have gone, like mine went from an appraisal of 17,000 something to 48,000 this year. And other people in the neighborhood have gone to 48,000 for their adjunct pieces of property that are just basically part of the, their, now just part of their yard. And so I'd like to understand how that happens, and if they're being compared to a building property, like maybe, further on that can be built on.
So she's asking about her lot in Mill Creek that is close to, that is part of her property was a separate lot, correct? That we increased the value on quite a bit this year. We did actually have some sales, so we had quite a few sales of lots in Mill Creek specifically, and we even had some of those adjunct lots that sold that actually, I remember looking at one that wasn't near $48,000 or someone had paid for. So it may have been part of what the increase was when the appraisers looked at it this year. But if you believe there's still issues with it and the value's too high on that property, please come tell us and talk to the appraiser and point out the drainage issues. We can't see all the drainage issues on it and such. But what I tell you, we did see there are sales out there. I was just looking at it this afternoon. There are sales out there even for those lots that have the drainage issues and such that people are willing to pay some low prices for.
I have a 6-acre property that I'd like to get an ag exemption for, and we were able to do that in the county. We moved here from Hardin County, East Texas. Is that possible? Is it sure would help me?
It all depends on the intensity and use you do of the property. Typically, what we have followed here in Bell County is that it's typically at least 10 acres more often than not. There's not a black and white line to it. It's up to the intensity that you bring into it if you're using it for that use and such. You have to come in and build history with it, and we can determine at that point. If you don't agree with our decision, you go before the appraisal review board, they can make a decision if we should be giving you an ag or not also. So that's available. But typically, we have 10 acres as our starting point for most of the ag here, especially for the black dirt in the area.
There's no way I can buy any adjoining land there, so I'm stuck.
Yeah. Come in, apply for it, come and talk to us. If we deny it, come back and protest it, come talk to us.
Is there a state law determining what amount of acreage can be determined, that can be classified as agricultural?
Yes, there are state laws talking about how much
Different in every town.
How much acreage? No, there is no law that says how much acreage there is.
Well, Bell County is just pulling that out of thin air.
But every county has its own based on what they've seen in history and experience and what they've seen is used for ag in the area.
But it's not state law.
There's no laws that any number actually.
No?
Hello.
You talked about you talked about the homestead exemption. What other exemptions do we get?
So he asked about homestead exemptions and what other exemptions you can get. The other exemptions you can get are the over 65 exemptions, and that is basically it's actually more of a freeze on your taxes. Tax that is going to be for that year. There's also disabled exemptions, and there's also disabled veteran exemptions also. Those are.
What about retired teachers? We get nothing.
I have a two-part question. So the first one, let me make sure I understood correctly. You said the median home value that you guys paid, your rate was $160,000. Correct. And what actually the house is sold for the average? Right, across the whole county.
Yeah, I believe that's the ratio that the average sales price for the Texas A&M real estate is $169,000.
Square footage, the average square footage of the homes that you use to get to that.
Say again.
Average square footage, so you have the median of 169,000, and then you have to get that across some median square footage as well, right?
We did, that was reported straight from Texas A&M. So those are reported directly from Texas A&M. I don't have the data that actually produced that. That was reported directly from another source. 169,000.
The average sales.
No, we have that was was just to show that what the market sources are saying. We do have sales data of lots, and some of those lots that are sold no creek with it.
I actually think I have a lot, Mill Creek, that there's a creek that runs right down the middle and you can't build a house in it.
I understand, and please come in and talk to us. I do know that one of the small ones I saw sold didn't sell for some of that market. I don't know if it had the same issues, so that we can compare yours to that one and see how it works.
Okay.
It was another very small lot that was unbuildable too. I can't know the differences, but please come talk to us. Billy, over here. Billy.
The mountains tell me that these mines may not be big enough signals here. We'll check them out. Check.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So there's a bigger picture here. I don't know if I understand in specifically for home appraisal, that's what this meeting for, or if it also may discuss some of the bigger picture, which is spending, where the money's coming from. What we all know is that there's a bit of a shell game. We got a lot of things that need money, a lot of things that need to be paid for. These guys have to get the money. So the way they look at it, the best way they look at it is the quickest way they look at it, which is by raising or getting property taxes. Because there's really no other option. We've got 3 schools apparently in Bill County that are being built in 1 year. Is that am I correct? Okay, so what they stack on that? We got 3 schools in 1 year. We're gonna pay for that. We got teacher training. We've got a lot of other things that are happening. We look at our paperwork that we send in, or is it, we're spending our taxes on, well, what's the percentage on ISD? Answer that. What percentage of our property taxes goes to ISD self-management?
Okay, so
About 70%? Okay, so what we know is there's a lot of schools being built, there's a lot of ISD money that needs to be brought in. What about sales taxes? Is that an option? Is it just state sales taxes? Can the city of Salado start sales taxes? Is there any kind of municipal sales tax where everybody that spends money can put into the pot? They'll pay for this stuff that you guys are approving. That's all.
okay, that's a really good question. Take a good bit of extra. All right, I'm gonna try to talk loud. Can you hear me from there? Okay, I'm an auctioneer too, so I can project a little bit. So that's a very big question that has a very long answer, and I hate it too. It's complicated, it's convoluted, and use the word I think shell game, and I don't disagree with that.
Some of us have got to move out.
I totally understand.
We're gonna move out. Some of us are gonna sell our homes to people who don't even have to pay taxes, and you guys are gonna get stuck with the bigger, with everybody that does pay, their taxes go up because you still have to have the money in the hitman to get it.
Okay, well, first off, nobody here's a hitman. Nobody's trying to take anybody's property. Nobody's pushing anybody out of the area. Bottom line is, Texas, as a state, gets most of its revenue from property taxes. Those property taxes do not go to the state of Texas, however. And that's designed from our forefathers that designed the Republic in the first days. They wanted local control. They allowed the taxing entities at the local area to take those taxes in. The sales tax goes to, by and large, the state. They let the municipalities have a little percentage off the top of it, but the municipalities have no capacity whatsoever to change that sales tax. That goes to a point where the House today actually started discussing increasing the sales tax 1%, which personally I think is a horrible idea, but that's a whole nother discussion. Bottom line is, our property taxes that we collect here are used by our local entities here, which is why I've got all those representatives here. Except for maybe the village of Salado. They had a meeting tonight and couldn't be here, but I hope they get here pretty quick. But your school districts, your county, your special districts like the underground water district, well, the library's a bad example, they get sales tax, but basically, your elected officials, myself being one of them, are the people that respond directly to you about how much we tax and what rate we put on that tax. When property values go up and therefore increase the tax coming in, we have opportunity to reduce that tax rate to what is now called the effective rate. And we've already had discussions about doing just that if that revenue's there. The problem that you get, particularly with Bell County, and I'm just speaking for Bell County here right now, is that Bell County's growing very rapidly. So the more people that come here, the more roads we need, the more sheriff we need, the more jails we need, all those things, those services that we have to provide, which by and large are not services that the county necessarily even wants to provide, but are state mandated that we have to provide because we are a direct arm of the local state to determine what monies we spend on jails, what money we spend on indigent health, indigent defense, the court system. All that's paid for by us locally, but it's the state telling us what we have to do with a lot of that. Not all of it, but a big chunk of it, almost a majority, depending on how you look at it. So when the state says in House Bill 3 that they just passed, that they know, in that bill, they said we project a 5% increase in property taxes. Does that mean that the governor called the comptroller and said, get me 5%? I don't believe that to be true. However, when you look at Texas historic growth, we are in a state of this union that is growing very rapidly. There are people coming from all over because we're friendly to business, we're friendly to property taxes, which I know you don't believe that right now, but we have some of the lowest taxes in the country when you consider we don't have an income tax to offset that with. There are other places in this country that have higher taxes than we do with income taxes and sales taxes. I'm not trying to tell you you're not paying too much tax.
No, I'm just telling you, man, our property taxes are exceeding our mortgage rate.
I totally understand, and I'm not saying that's right. What I'm saying is the gentleman earlier described this as a three-legged stool, and he's right. You have your local entities that are setting tax rates, and they can drop those rates just as easy as they can increase them. And you need to be talking to me and other representatives in your area to do just that if you feel like we've got too much money to spend. And I'm all for you talking to me about that. We've got the tax assessor's office, which is through the state comptroller, which, contrary to popular belief, none of us here local have any influence over whatsoever. He's taking his directive from the state comptroller, he's just doing his job. So when he's trying to assess these fair market values, he's going based off of the law that the comptroller has sent to him to do so. And I think he's doing a fair job, and I appreciate the fact he's willing to put himself out there and talk to you here tonight because of that. Then you have the state that dictates how we're going to collect certain taxes, what sales taxes will increase, how we're going to try to offset school taxes, all that good stuff, and it all does play together. So everybody here needs to be talking to every one of us and understanding that system and telling us what you want, and that's why I'm here tonight. I do not disagree with you in the least. I can't tell you that I myself can have a solution on my own. I can't tell you that I know the solution for that whole three-legged stool, but that's why we're having this conversation here tonight. What I can tell you is that Salado has seen increases in property values for the last 8 years in several different areas, but particularly in the homesteads, because my first line of work was banking, and I still do a lot of interim construction around here. 7 years ago, the interim construction to build a house here, my builders were costing them about $90 to $100 a foot to build a house here. That same builder, that same house today costs them about $130 to $140 to build that house. He's charging you $160 because he's making his profit on it. So when houses sell here for $160 a foot versus selling here for $110 a foot 7 years ago, that's almost that's a 32%, 31% increase or so. Now, if the appraiser has not kept up with that, which I believe has been the problem, not throwing Billy on the bus, or even Marvin Hahn, who's retired now, but the state has come in and tested this area and said, you are not keeping up with values, do it again, we're holding school funding. And none of us want that, because guess what happens when that happens? We have to make up the difference, and our property taxes go up some more. So all of this works in conjunction with one another, and again, I don't have the fix myself, but all of us here together need to be talking to all of our state legislators. We need to be talking to all of our county and city officials and our school district, and we're all here to listen to those and get that information and hear what you're dealing with. One thing I do want to talk about that he covered pretty quickly in the slideshow, but that I've heard a lot of, is my valuation went up so high
And yet, if you go and look at what you paid in taxes last year versus what you're paying in taxes this year, it may not be any, if any, not much, difference at all. The fact that your valuation went up does not mean your taxes went up drastically. That's not the case with everybody, but check your tax bill. You need to understand the valuation does not directly affect the amount of tax you pay. And I just want to make that clear so people can look at that bill and understand really where the taxes change. We had her next, and then you, sir.
I'm just kind of curious because I live over in Three Creeks, and all of our values, even double lines, people who have much bigger cars than I do, we're all across the board $30,000. I understand how this works. I understand that things are going up. We saw a 48% increase across the board for some of our people out there. And our appraisal, while it is, we have a homestead, while it is saying, $237,000, there's no way our house is gonna sell for that. And my neighbors and I have the exact same house. We all went through and looked at ours, and every one of us have a different appraisal value. So are we looking at the houses where we are? Are we taking all of Dale County that have the same similar houses and doing it that way?
So now we are looking at houses just in Three Creeks, and I have actually talked to a few of the homeowners there already. We did look at specifically those sales that were out there, and there could be differences even if you have the exact same home. An appraiser can measure a house today and come up with 10 to 100 square feet difference on a different day you measure it. It all depends on how much they round up from 1 foot. So that difference can happen just from the same appraiser. That may not explain all the differences. There are porches and patios, those kind of differences that are there. They also could be built 1 year apart from each other, even if they were just 3 or 4 months, but it could be right there at the year where the appraiser said this is the 2018 versus the 2017 year build. To address that you couldn't sell it for that, then you need to come in and talk to us and show us the sales. That neighborhood, there was quite a few sales out there. It's a fairly homogeneous neighborhood. Most of the sales that we had, we were right on what the sales were at. But there are sales because it's a new neighborhood. We don't get all the sales, especially from builders particularly. They don't all get recorded in MLS, and we don't get all that information. So if
So if I refinanced less than a year ago, and I'm bringing out paperwork to you showing what our appraisal was, that's what you need plus my square footage, right?
yes, we can use that appraisal to look at, to review, to see how it compares to us, and see what comparables he used and how his adjustments were made. Now, if that was over a year ago and the values have changed, then it may not necessarily mean we're going to come to that value either. If there were more sales at the end of the year that were higher than what that appraisal showed, then it may not mean we'll come to that appraisal value. Bring it in, bring sales in, ask the builder, go get some more recent sales. I talked to a homeowner just the other day in there, and he was telling me the sales are up quite a bit from what they were a year ago when y'all first bought your house in there. It may not be believable, but they're selling for more, but that's what he was telling me they were, and the sales were showing us that.
Over here. Shay?
Anyway, I live in downtown Prairie. I don't know if y'all aware of this. Got a pretty long bit of property. Y'all went up 1/3. This is a shame that people can't even hear y'all. Look how many people's in here now that was before. I can't believe y'all didn't even check the sound system out. Sir, I didn't even hear you on anything.
to an appraiser. I will tell you though, there were quite a few land acreage sales in Salado that were
Last
closed.
one sold was 5,200 an acre.
We had some that sold for quite a bit more than that. You can talk to our appraisers and we will be able to show you the sales that we have.
You're telling the Yankee contractors to come in here and buy the land and then turn around and make a quarter acre lots out of it. You tell them this.
Like I said, sir, we're just trying to reflect what the market's doing, but you come and talk to our appraiser and they'll show you the sales we have and there could be adjustments to it.
Hey, Dick, just to answer your question, you know, I know you.
Just a minute ago, you know, talked about everybody moving, you know, the population growing. There's an increase in tax base out there. Just right around in a 5-mile radius. With all the septic systems that's want to go in, the sewer plants want to go in. There's 2,500 houses proposed. That land was bringing $600 last year. This year and next year, it's all broke out into quarter acre, half acre lots. That's $6,000 a lot. So why do we need to have all this big increase? And it goes by what he said. We got a 600-acre place to sell, now there's gonna be a 4-acre lot. They're taxing us on that increase.
Well, let me-
Not on actual value of farmland.
My answer is to both of you, and both of you know me, and you know, I think you can both actually. Go
And
ahead.
it all goes back to school tax too. We've got school law. We've got this much growth coming in. Why do we need it? When we got that much tax revenue coming in, why do we need it?
I'm asking the same question. Both of y'all know me, and I don't think either one of you say I've ever lied to you. Is that correct? Okay, not until tonight, maybe. Yeah. So, but bottom line, you know, I've been looking for land around here for a while. Moved out of what is now Harker Heights, lived in the country, and Harker Heights took that over. I sold that, and I'm for 6-7 years now. I've been looking for dirt, nothing on it, nothing at all, dirt, and anywhere around Salado ISD, because my kids have already come and gone to Salado ISD at the time I've been trying to get them here. So, in doing that, I've looked all over the place for plus or minus 100-acre tracts. I have not found one single person that will sell me a 100-acre tract for less than $5,000 an acre. If you know one, I want your number tonight because we could probably get you a contract signed.
I'll put my, for instance, mine went up from 5,200 to 6,400 last year.
I agree.
Okay, this year it's over 9,000.
Okay, so that's my question, and that was my question to Billy, and we'll talk about
They
that.
sold right half mile from me.
Yeah.
I asked the man about it. I knew about what he gave for it.
Right.
He actually gave 3,000 less an acre than what I thought. It was 5,200 an acre. So why, my value was already 6,400. Why did it go over 9,000?
Okay, that's exactly the question I asked Billy last week when I asked him to have this meeting.
Okay.
Because
Go to the tax code. Are you at the tax office? When we go
Yes.
pay our taxes? Is that where your office is?
Yes, sir, their appraisers are waiting to talk to you, to show you the sales and to make adjustments, and they
Is
say that.
that where you?
in
The
Belgium,
tax appraisal district in downtown Belton.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
and your concern is valid, and that's why I wanted this meeting, so y'all could understand how to get to him and how to talk to him and figure that out for us all. I appreciate it.
If you're going to tax on it, you need to at least look at a picture of the place. You can go to Bellcat, and I can do it any day of the week, and see the picture of my place.
Yes, sir, we look at it as much as we can.
You can see how my house is built, and you see the floodplain goes through half of it. That floodplain is not worth 9,000 acres to be built house.
And that's exactly why they set up the tax system, so it gives you guys an opportunity to come in and talk about your value. With 169,000 parcels, we can't look at every single one every year. And that's why we're giving you the opportunity.
Talked to them last year down there, and they said, well, if you're gonna put it in the floodplain, we'll take you out of ag. That makes a lot of damn sense.
Now, come talk to us again this year.
Over here next.
I have 2 comments and one question. First question is, or first comment is, if you were going to pay raise, the county just got a 10+% pay raise. How many people get a 10+% plus pay raise in a year?
Who told you the county got a 10% pay raise?
Very few, unless you take positions, they go somewhere else.
No. You said the county got a 10% pay raise?
Yeah, based on taxes.
No, we have not.
Taxes,
No.
property taxes went up almost 10%.
That doesn't mean overall everybody.
They haven't even set the budgets yet.
We haven't even set the budget. We don't even know what our income is yet.
When we set the values, we don't even know what the budget they need to for taxes for.
What you're gonna tax me on versus what my house is worth 2 years ago and last year?
Well, again, sir, when I said the values, it has nothing to do with how much taxes are needed or how much budget they need. I don't even know what the budget they need at that point. All I'm trying to do is follow the market. This year, with what we saw compared to where the values were last year, Salado was one of the larger increases, including Academy, Holland, and Belton. Those were the areas that increased the most. They were 12 to 15% on median of most of the properties. So they did increase the most, but it had nothing to do with how much taxes or how much value that the state or the county or the school districts needed at that point.
But if you think about it, that all makes sense. I think if I finished, Salado at one time was shrinking. And now, I mean, everybody wants to come to Salado, we have a good school district, small rural town, not too far from Boston, Georgetown, Rockville. I mean, of course, people are gonna be a little bit more to come here, because it's nothing.
Absolutely, that's what's happening. They're coming up here paying more. We're following what the market is. It's up to the entities afterwards, after we give them the new value, to determine if they're going to lower or change tax rates based off the budget they need at that point. They haven't said there how much taxes they're going to charge you yet until they determine how much value is there and how much their budget is.
My concern is, I was strong math, I'm very strong in math, and frankly, you can make numbers look equally you want. And that's my concern. You cited a study that A&M did, we don't know how they came to the conclusions and what data they use. So without actually going all that detail, you could be selling us stock.
Well, and that's why the avenue is there for you to go talk to him and make sure that value is right. And that's what he's asking you to do. Good.
And all we're also citing those other sources for to show that they're saying the same thing we're saying. All the data that we have, well, there is numbers to back up the values that we came to. But if there's numbers y'all have differently or specific issues with your properties, that's where we're asking you to come talk to us.
We all want you to have the right values. Yes, sir.
You talked at least twice about possibly lowering the taxes. I'm curious when the last time Bell County lowered the taxes was, and are you seriously saying y'all are seriously considering lowering the tax rate? Or is that just talking today?
Again, for those of you here that know me, know I don't talk just to talk.
So when is the last time Bell County lowered the tax rate?
It's been 9-10 years ago it dropped.
So,
and then about 7 years ago it came back up, higher than it dropped actually, and the tax rate has not changed in Bell County. Now, that does not mean the tax revenue has not increased in Bell County.
right, I understand that,
okay.
but you're talking about lowering the tax rate.
To the effective rate.
Are y'all seriously considering doing that?
Yes. Now, I can't speak for the rest of the commissioners. There's 4 of us and a judge. There's 5 total. But one of the things that I ran on this last year was taking a hard look at what our budget is. I come from the corporate world. I want to know what we're spending our money on. I think all of y'all do too. And if we're spending too much money, I want to put more of it back in your pockets because I think all of us are better for that.
Since it hadn't been lowered in 10 years, it'll be very interesting to see what it gets lowered.
I agree 100%. I'm looking forward to it too. We start budgeting in May. Yes, sir.
Our tax rate appraisal last year for our property was $196,000. This year we're at $236,000. And I wonder who decided to increase that. And then also the tax rate last year was approximately 25 years. This year proposed tax is 43 years. So I'm asking, what's going to keep that going up that much next year? And if it keeps going like that, I can't afford to stay here.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Do you have the 65 exemption on your? Is this your homestead we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, your taxes should not be increased. You need to talk to these ladies down here before you leave tonight.
Also got the 65, age 65 and up. exemption
Okay.
on
Yeah.
that.
Y'all need to talk to them before you leave tonight, please. Yes, ma'am. Hey, Elizabeth.
I was trying to find out, my house is 26 years old, it's 1,760 square feet, and I've gone and tried to protest before, and they said there are no houses that are that old and that small that is sold for us to compare it to. So how do they compare, who do they compare mine to? And then also, they don't see what's inside the house. I have the same cabinets that have been there for 26 years.
Okay.
So if you don't do improvements to your house, how can you say it will sell for?
Let me repeat that because that's a question I've gotten a lot. So everybody can hear what she just said. The question is, I have a 26-year-old house. It's about 1,700 square foot, and she's gone in the past to argue the values, and she has been told in the past that there really aren't any cops for a house at 1,700 square foot. And secondly, that the inside of that house hasn't changed a lot in 26 years. So she's not made any improvements. It's not any nicer now than it was before. So how is the tax appraisal justified to increase the way it did? Did I get that right? Okay, so now it's your answer.
So when it comes to the houses that are unique or not as comparable, just like a fee appraiser, if you ask them to sell your house, they still have to come up to a value. So they're still going to pull the most comparable properties. They may be bigger, they may be smaller, they may be older or newer, but they're going to pull what we think are the most comparable properties, even if there isn't one exactly like yours. Once we do that, we make adjustments to it, make adjustments for the ages, for the size, and the differences. And if you're talking about Mill Creek specifically, I did see quite a few actually old homes that I was quite surprised at how much some of these older homes sold for last year. In the $300,000 range, some of these 1980 something built homes in Mill Creek that were selling for well more than they were looking for when I was shopping for a house a couple of years ago. But you can come in and talk to us and discuss that you hadn't had updates to your properties. We'll try to look for other comparables that haven't had updates to see if that makes a difference. And we can see if there's adjustments to be made. But I think if y'all or some of y'all were looking at some of the sales, especially those older houses like in Mill Creek and such that is sold, you'd be surprised at how much some of them are getting for what they're selling right now.
But they're a lot larger.
They are larger, and we'll make adjustments for those. It's just like if you ask a realtor to sell your house, they still got to figure out a value, right? Just because there's nothing else that's sold like yours doesn't mean that your value doesn't change with the market to go up or down. If the value still goes up or down, we just got to figure out what's the best comparable and make adjustments for those differences.
Okay, this gentleman was first, then we'll get to you, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, keeping up with modern technology, I read yesterday that the Texas legislature yesterday proposed a 1 cent increase in sales tax. Governor Atkins heard about our tax problems and everything, and now it seems they want to do something about it. But it's awful funny, Bell County has a sudden, very increase in their county taxes, which affect all of us. And it might be the state legislature will cap everybody out. Is it a reaction to what the state is doing, what Bell County is doing?
Absolutely not. It has nothing to do with that. So it's just basically, like I said, we're trying to reflect what the market is doing. And it seemed like on most of the sales we had, we were behind where the market was. Trust me, if I could have came in my first year and let the value stay the same and be flat, I would have been fine with that, and it would have made my life a lot easier this year. But once I saw the sales and the appraiser showed me what's going on, we couldn't ignore what the market was doing. It's basically following the market.
And to reiterate the point, no taxing entity here in Bell County, the county, the cities, the school districts, special districts, none of them have any influence over the valuations that he does. He works for the comptroller, and that's the state.
The appraisal went up. There was no tax increase.
The state does that. The state does that, not any of the local entities. We have zero input on what he values the property at. I cannot call Billy and say, I need tax appraisals to go up. He won't care.
No, that's true. We elected you to keep our taxes down. He is a non-elected official, right? Okay? But we are his employers. So we have to be blanket. Like the gentleman said earlier, you need to plan out a forum, and the May 15th deadline may not be realistically with this kind of increase and this amount of anger among your employers. That if you something that the commissioners maybe a little bit extend the possibility.
The commissioners cannot extend that. It is the state. And that is a state law that by May 15th. You can talk to the state about that. I have zero control over that. Over here, yes, sir?
Yeah, the appraisal that we're doing is based on sales that have gone on around that particular property. Who's to say the Salado doesn't have some really good realtors?
I think they do.
So maybe that's what it is, not rather than the property.
It may be, and it may be all the people from California moving in and paying so high prices, but if those are the people setting the markets, that's what the market becomes.
You've got a really good realtor sitting behind you over here, and she does a great job. And I know she doesn't want me to say her name, and she tries to stay down. But it's not. But the realtors don't raise the value of the property. I can tell you what raises